Good afternoon. I'm Jill Dannemiller. I'm Director of Data Management and Analysis for the Ohio Department of Higher Education. And my co-presenter, Julie Carpenter-Hubin, and I will talk about data overview. I'm trying to share my screen. Okay, here. Okay. And we will go over, I'm going to cover some of the data from our project that we have done, looking at the course data that's in HEI. I'm going to go over some strong start to finish outcomes. And then I will turn it over to Julie, and she will go over the recommendations from the Data Implementation Forum. So the first thing I'm starting with is just looking at the counts of course sections offered at the developmental level. And so you can see this by subject area, English, math, and others grouped together. And then also, if you can see where it's broken up by sector. So the community colleges, university, regional campuses, and then the main campuses. So the first year that I'm starting with there is 2010. So that'd be the 9-10 academic year. And then I've skipped to 17, 18, 19, and 20, because that's really when the majority of institutions that have kind of changed to the co-rec model or made adjustments to standalone DevEd, really when that got started. So you can see the dramatic decline in the number of course sections that are offered since 2010 at the community college level. The regional campus level also had a decline with a peak there in 2018, but dramatic decrease since then. And then the main campuses also have decreased the number of course sections they've offered as standalone developmental courses. This is a similar look, but this is enrollments. So this is students being enrolled into the course sections that are, again, standalone developmental level. And we see the same trends. So a high number were enrolled in those standalone dev courses in the 9-10 academic year, with a steady decline from 2017 forward. This is looking at the percentage of underrepresented minorities compared to non-underrepresented minority enrollments in standalone DevEd. Again, this gets to the focus on equity that we have in our system. And just to give you some grounding, this is not by year, but community colleges are approximately 75%, that should be non-URM students, 25% URM students, and the regional campuses and main campuses are about 87-13. And of course that varies by institution and it varies by year, but again, just to give you some idea of where the student population is in general. And then looking at the enrollment in developmental courses, you can see that underrepresented minority students, which I have defined, and I should add that to the slide, as African American, Hispanic, or Native American students. You can see that their enrollment as a percentage of who is enrolled in those developmental courses is higher than their enrollment in the student population overall. So we do have some issues with equity there. This slide is looking at the goal of Strong Start to Finish, which is getting students to complete a college level English and math course within their first year of enrollment. And first year is defined as the first 3 terms of enrollment. So you can see these are starting cohorts. So the starting cohort of fall 2009, overall, we were at about 38.1%. And looking at the cohort that started in fall of 18, we're up to just over 50% of students that are completing those college level courses in the first year. This is looking at first-time full-time students that are completing, and that percentage on both cases is higher, but it's about 55% of first-time full-time students that are completing college level English and math courses in the first year. So this is looking again at first-time full-time students, but looking at the sector breakdown. So you can see at the community colleges, we're up to almost 40%. The regional campuses just over 40% at 43.8%, and university main campuses, over 60% of the students there. And we did have a change in our funding model. Those of you familiar with the funding model will know that the funding for standalone developmental courses at the main campuses is no longer eligible to receive the state subsidy for instruction, or SSI. And last year was the first year that that change went into place in the funding model. And there's some other changes anticipated for the community college funding model, which may help kind of push this reform effort even farther from a policy standpoint. So looking at the percentage completing courses in their first year, again, we see a gap there with our non-underrepresented minorities and the minority students. Again, that is one of our goals, to close those gaps and really keep the focus on equity in our systems. This is looking at Pell eligible students that are also underrepresented minorities or not. And again, you can see the gap. The Pell eligible students are less likely to complete college level English or math courses in the first year. Last look, and this is looking at the age groups that we have, which is over 25 and under 25. So you can see students who are under 25 are more likely to complete college level English and math in their first year. The students that are over 25 are less likely. There could be a variety of reasons for that. They could already have a degree and are returning for additional training, even though this group should be the degree-seeking students. But it also could be that they are rusty and kind of putting off taking a math class, for example, until they're kind of back in the swing of things at school. Just a reminder for you that there are reports available in the HEI portal that you can see. You have to have a login to the HEI portal because it is a secure system. But if you go under reports and scroll down, you'll see 2 options: Strong Start to Finish detail, which will give you student level detail, and then the summary report has counts that are summarized, but also includes all of the student categories. And these reports are based only on the HEI data, so they would not include any students that you know on your campus have completed the college level courses through alternate means, like an AP class, IB, they've transferred in from a private institution or out-of-state institution. several other reasons why we wouldn't have it in AGI, but just in case, if you want to see this data that you can manipulate, because you can download all of these files, it is available through the AGI portal. Okay, that's it. I'm going to turn it over to Julie.
Great, thank you. Can you forward to the next slide then, please? So first I want to recognize and thank all of my colleagues who served on the data implementation forum. I am privileged to present their great ideas and recommendations here. Next slide. We have 5 recommendations. Number 1, the forum recommended that 2 variables should be added to the ODHE data collections. The first would be a simple yes/no indicator in the course inventory file. And that would tell us, obviously, for each course, whether it's a gateway course, but it wouldn't tell us whether the particular course fulfills the gateway requirement for a particular major. For example, your gateway course for a science major will probably be college algebra, but if you're majoring in English, it could be quantitative reasoning. The data won't have that level of detail, but the yes/no indicator will support research comparing the retention and success of students who take any English and math gateway course in the first year and/or first 30 credit hours with the retention and success of students who do not, and we think that would be very useful. The student entrance file already records whether each student is underprepared for college math and underprepared for college English, with not reported or unknown as a possible response. We recommend adding variables that would record whether each student had met their gateway English and math requirements prior to matriculation, and if so, through what method. And then ODHE would need to evaluate the percentage of not reported or unknown responses to this question, and perhaps distinguish these variables as ones for which institutions would not be held accountable for 100% accuracy, since that's probably not actually possible. Okay, and then recommendation 2 is that we would evaluate those changes after we implement those recommendations. We recommend that ODHE bring together IR leaders, institutional research leaders, to help determine whether the additional data actually gets us the information we need and how much burden it imposes on our various types of institutions. And then we would make adjustments as needed. Recommendation 3 is that the initial data analysis should only include first-time, full-time freshmen. And since this is a little bit experimental, it made sense to our group to begin the analyses with the most homogeneous group with the most straightforward data. And then, depending on what we learn from those analyses, we may want to add in non-traditional or transfer students following that. Recommendation 4, this one is really important. And that is that ODHE needs to clarify to institutions that while it's important that the data be as accurate and complete as possible, perfection is not expected. There was a concern that some institutions might not be able to report these data with a high degree of accuracy. For example, it could easily be the case that a student would take a gateway course in her first year, transfer to another institution, but not have that credit transferred until after the reporting deadline. So we need to make sure that institutional researchers and their institutions are not expected to achieve perfection when that's not possible. And I say this as someone who retired from being an institutional researcher. It is really easy for us to be concerned that getting to 0.000001 in terms of accuracy for numbers is critical. And so we can obsess about that. I have. And so we just need reassurance that that is not expected. And then recommendation 5 is that ODHE should think about how to address additional critical questions. We think that ODHE should consult with not just institutional researchers, of course, but also with higher ed faculty who focus on undergraduate student success to support ongoing relevant research, including these following questions. Our first research question looks at whether all students should take math or English in their first semester or even their first year. Are there any groups who would perform better if they waited a bit? For example, non-traditional students. They've already been away from their math classes for 3 years. Is it better for them to kind of get adjusted to school, or is it better for them to take math right away? But just not sure. Next question is, what's the impact of College Credit Plus on success in English and math? What can we learn about student success in English and math courses by comparing outcomes for students who completed their gateway courses before high school graduation versus after? And then another question is, what can we learn about course taking patterns, including including repeating courses that were not completed successfully the first time around? Should students take them right away? Should there be a break in between taking them again? That sort of thing. And so, as is usually the case, I'm sure that exploring those questions will lead to more questions. So I think our research fun is just beginning. There's a lot more that we can learn using our collective data sets to understand and support student success. Thank you.